Hello and welcome to another episode of the To Baldly Go podcast, and thank you for joining me on my mission to explore strange new worlds, to seek out new life and new civilizations, to baldly go where so many have gone before. My name is Aaron and I am watching Star Trek for the first time from the beginning, then discussing with my Trekkie friends. As always, I am joined today by my old friend Nate. This week, we will be discussing evolution, the Ensigns of Command, and the survivors. Now, engage. So, speaking of boring, should we talk about some Star Trek?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Well, probably in the little intro to this, I will recap our discussion about how I was totally right about the emissary, and you guys all agreed with me when we were talking
No,
around the
no,
fire
that,
pit.
that didn't happen.
Pretty much verbatim how it happened.
I pretty much remember you bringing that up and then the whole collective group stomping on your throat over it.
Which is ironic because I said, sure, I'll give it a 7
That's fair.
on rewatching. But
Should I
nope,
update?
what happened was we sat around the fire pit. Greg was in town, Nate was in town. We sat around, had a great conversation about how it was, we'll say, still an overrated episode, but not it was better than okay. No.
I will concede that. It's not
In
an awesome
in
episode.
in reality, I rewatched it. I thought it was better than the first time I watched it, and while I wasn't going to bump it up to an 8 this time, I did make the comment that I could see it getting better with subsequent viewings.
Yep.
So I could see that one easily becoming an 8, though I wasn't there quite yet. So, with that, let's move into season 3 of Next Gen with in the first episode, the crew fights for survival when a mysterious force attacks the ship's life support systems in evolution. So, I I enjoyed this episode. I thought it was fine. It was better than okay, maybe not quite great, so I'll call it good and give it a 7. I thought it was a fine episode. I had some issues with it, um, a couple issues, but overall it was good. So I gave this one a 7.
I agree. I mean, I think if you look at it from the perspective of, season three and, the third premiere episode, right?
Hmm.
Between the series premiere and then season two and now three, their premieres, it is the most solid of all three of them.
Yeah.
Um, Very clearly a show that has now hit its stride. I know that cough. I still have that cough.
Yep. Oh,
Good to know that in another
been
week I
rough.
probably still will. Awesome. Um, but no, I mean, I think it's a really interesting episode. It's an interesting premise. I think by and large it's done fairly well.
Yeah.
I give it a 7. I think it's just a solid episode. It's unfortunate that neither Greg nor Abby are here tonight because I think this might be one of the few times where I will say that Wesley done fucked up, and in a
Yep.
pretty catastrophic way. Like he clearly understood what would happen potentially if one of these nanites or some of them got out, like what could happen with them. Obviously, this was like next level. No one really predicted that, but he certainly was careless and basically almost got 1,000 people killed as a result. So
Hmm.
I will concede that this is a shitty Wesley episode.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, Wesley messed up and then was spending the whole time trying to clean it up.
Mhm.
And it it was interesting to have that discussion of what is life. I mean, and seeing the different perspectives and where kind of you draw the line on the importance of the work that people are doing and this other thing that is not understood and may or may not be what they think it is. And taking that kind of, I guess, another similar approach to the data discussions of, are these alive or are they just machines that
Right.
just need to be turned off because they're going to kill everybody or ruin this work that can't happen for another, what, 176 or 196 years? I mean,
Some
that's not insignificant. And whether we like it or not, there is a hierarchy in terms of life forms. I mean, in reality,
Mhm.
humans and the work that we do more important than a lot of other animals who don't communicate as well as we do. Um, and that may be a dark, blunt thing to say, but it's kind of true.
Yep.
But Stubbs then is like clearly not looked upon very favorably by stating that. And he does it in a very callous way. And he is kind of taking that approach of like, I was a wonderkind. I know more than you. My work is so much more important than these little nanites. Um, but it, yeah, makes it's an interesting just conversation there.
So I was confused. Was Dr. Stubbs Nathan Shelley? If he was a wonderkind, just
Who?
no, don't get the reference. Man, you need
No.
to go back and rewatch Ted Lasso.
Oh.
Um,
Oh, yeah. Oh, so I'm sorry, speaking of Ted Lasso, when we were sick last week, Abby was watching The Martian, and in that, one of the guys at, I think, JPL, I was like, it's Nate from Ted Lasso.
I did not remember he was in that, but now that
Yep.
you say it, I do.
Yep.
It's a
Yeah.
great movie too.
So I yeah, I thought it was an interesting conversation they had over the nanites and all of that, and but also the work that Stubbs is doing and just trying to figure it all out. Now, my issue with the episode is basically that it just wrapped up too neatly
Yeah.
at the end. Um, it was just all of a sudden everything was just done and resolved, and
Yep.
they
They
got
came to a
everything they wanted out
negotiation,
of it.
life goes on, yada yada yada.
Yep. Uh, yeah, my only issue really is that the story got tied up a little too neatly, and it was like, oh, everything's falling apart. We're not going to get the data that we want. We're never going to get it again, or it's going to be so long. Oh, and all of a sudden it's fixed, and everything worked perfectly.
Yep.
Huzzah!
Magic.
So that I thought was a little weak, but there were nice moments of character development, character focus. I mean, Wesley kind of fucked up in this episode, but he also knew it and then spent the entire episode trying to fix it and take responsibility for it.
He knew
But
it. He tried to fix it. I do feel as though, in some ways, like he eventually took responsibility and
yeah,
did so fairly voluntarily. I
he
mean,
was
obviously,
trying to
he was definitely
fix
trying
it
to
before anybody knew.
yeah. And, here comes Guinan being Guinan to, basically nudge him in the right direction in a way that only she can, right?
Yeah.
Very
Hmm.
non-judgmental, but very like, hey, go figure this out, or we're gonna figure it out for you, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um, to kind of push him to do the right thing. And, I think some of that is, you know, Wesley is obviously still young and
Hmm.
therefore immature, and he's trying to prove something to the crew, to Picard, to his mother now that she's back, and to
Hmm.
himself. And so it's, probably easier to try and sweep it under the rug real quick and fix it
Yeah.
than it is to own up to it. But he does eventually do the right thing. And so I will give him credit for, at least eventually doing the right thing, because there are some adults that can't even do that, right?
Hmm.
Um, I did love the line though, as he's in 10 forward and he runs into Guinan and just goes, "It was just an experiment." And she goes, "A doctor friend once said the same thing to me. His name was Frankenstein."
Yep.
Um, and then it just makes me think of one of my favorite quotes as an extension of that is knowledge is knowing that Frankenstein wasn't the monster, but wisdom is knowing that Frankenstein is the monster
Hmm.
because he's the one
Yeah.
that the monster, right?
Yep. Yeah. So kind of switching focus a little bit. Um, how you said season three is starting out, good start, good premiere episode.
Yep.
Um, one of the first things I noticed is that the production quality has taken another step up,
Yep.
and we're seeing higher quality in just in general. I don't know if it was the stellar matter going around the neutron star,
That
but it
opening
just
shot was
it
gorgeous.
yeah, but then it was also just everything was just a little bit sharper, a little bit better lighting, just high. It just felt higher quality,
Yep.
which is great to see. I mean, that's generally a sign that things are going the right direction for a show. But it wasn't going like over the top flashy. It was just, hey, we can do this now too, and I thought that worked. Um, and yeah, just an observation I had. Um, the first thing I noticed, and I started looking for things that maybe added significance to this, ended up finding nothing. Um, but I did notice that the Enterprise is moving right to left in the kind of establishing shot at the beginning
Okay.
of the episode. It's a rare occurrence. It's almost always going left to right.
Yep.
Um, and at least so in the original series it only happened one or two times, and I know at least one of the times it happened was the episode, I believe, Mirror Mirror, and there was significance to the fact that they were going the other direction. It was
Yep.
kind of foreshadowing of the story. So I was looking for that throughout the episode, and other than this part of the conversation, there was nothing to it, at least that I can see. Of course, Dr. Crusher is back. And didn't they didn't go full they didn't go Chekhov on it and just act like she'd been there the whole time. They
No.
made it clear like no, she's gone. She was gone for a full year,
Yep.
and there were ramifications to that. There were
Hmm.
ramifications to her relationship with Wesley and her understanding of where he is in life. And I think they handled it pretty decently without going into too much of an exposition dump to do it. They were able to fill it in. They were able to fill in a year worth of story for her with a few well-crafted lines to explain she was gone, now she's back,
Hmm.
and also the fact that Wesley was kind of pissed about it.
Yeah.
Like
I mean,
like
can you really blame him
no,
on
not at
something?
all. But um another thing I noticed just nothing major, but the guest star Ken, I think Ken Jenkins, I want to say his name is, but
Yep.
Bob Kelso from Scrubs,
And
and
playing the same damn
kind of
character.
kind of the same character. Um, yeah, it was good. He had some really good lines and some good discussion throughout the episode, even if he also did some terrible things in the episode.
Yeah.
And as much as Wesley put them at risk, he kind of did too by he fucked around and found out.
Mhm. Hmm. Excuse me.
Um,
I think it's an interesting. I mean, obviously, it's very intentional, right? But to
mhm.
put Wesley and Stubbs together because it's like two ends of one life,
Yep.
right? And even Stubbs brings that up as a comparison of like,
Hmm.
hey, you were me when I was your age, like,
Hmm.
and so I'm sure that was very intentional to kind
Yep.
of put those two and format the episode the way they did. Um, so it was kind of cool to see that. I thought Stubbs was a really great foil in general for Picard and Riker. as
Yep.
effectively, he was effectively the antagonist of this episode. I don't think you could really argue that the nanites were, the biggest bad of the episode. It was really him and his stubbornness and willing to put everyone in danger just to fulfill, an experiment that he wouldn't live to see otherwise.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
but it still worked. Like I think he played that character very, very well.
Oh, I thought he played that character amazingly. Um, he was simultaneously a character I was curious to find out more about
Hmm.
and liked the character, but at the same time did not like the character because he was very fixated on the one thing that mattered to him, and to him that was the most important thing in the universe.
Yep.
And everything else be damned. Um, but yeah, I thought he had some really just interesting moments, and it was a I thought it was a cool juxtaposition compared to the the Enterprise, space travel, all of that. Seeing him sitting there in this chair replaying old baseball games from memory, and and just envisioning them, and the conversation he had with Wesley about that earlier, just talking about baseball. And what he says to Wesley is, once centuries ago, it was the beloved national pastime of the Americas, Wesley, abandoned by a society that prized fast food and faster games, lost to impatience. But I've seen the great players make the great plays. Wesley said, do you create them on the holodeck? And Stubbs points to his head, no, in here. With the knowledge of statistics, runs, hits and errors, times at bat, box scores, men like us do not need holodecks, Wesley. I've played seasons in my mind. It was my reward to myself for patience. Knowing my turn would come. Call your shot, point to a star. One great blast and the crowd rises. A brand new era in astrophysics. Postponed 196 years on account of rain. I I thought that was a just fascinating little monologue.
Uh-huh.
And just there is something slower about, say, the game of baseball. And I
For sure.
remember it's been a long time since I've been to a game, but I
Yep.
remember going to Twins games and seeing people there with the notebook and scoring everything, and how you can basically recreate an entire baseball game on paper. And when you know how to read it, you could
Yep.
envision every pitch, everything that happened in the game. And then seeing him actually do that, I thought was kind of a really cool little vignette in the episode.
It
Um,
it
doesn't
tells
add a
me,
ton to the story, but it was just an interesting vignette that stuck with me.
but I think the other thing too is it tells me that Stubbs on some level probably has a photographic memory, right? That if he can retain all
Yeah.
that, all his statistics in his brain and then just lay back in a chair with his eyes closed and
Hmm.
run through that, like that's not a easy thing to do.
No.
Um, and so that's just another, data point in establishing his brilliance,
Hmm.
right? That he can just keep that in his brain and just replay it at will
Yep.
whenever he wants to. Um, it's interesting because I wrote down that line too of, baseball being lost to impatience.
Hmm.
And I was like, with a, basically true question mark after,
Yeah.
because I think that's probably true. And I think that was, I, I think that hit home for me, because I don't watch baseball hardly at all. And
Hmm.
I've been to a game. It's probably been 2 years since I've been
Hmm.
to a Twins game, but I've been to many at Target
Hmm.
Field. Um, but it was when I was at that last game is when I realized that they have a play clock in baseball now.
Yep.
And that blew my mind.
Yep. They
A
have a
game
pitch
that used
clock.
to take as long as it took,
Hmm.
and you dealt with it. Now all of a sudden, like every other sport, has a play clock on it.
Yep. Yep.
Um,
There's a
and if
pitch, there's
that's
a
not a
pitch clock,
highlight of
and
impatience, I don't know what is.
right. Right. And yeah, so it's funny that we're having this conversation because I was having a similar conversation just a little bit ago with Abby, and this will kind of date the episode depending on whenever we end up releasing it.
Hmm.
But Abby's mom is in town, so we started putting Christmas stuff out today, knowing that we were going to be putting up Christmas before Thanksgiving this year. I I suck at giving gifts. I just always struggle finding the right thing. Well, I nailed it this year, and I had to give Abby her gift early
Okay.
because she had said she wanted like a record player to play Christmas music.
Oh,
So
cool.
I bought us a record player and the Frank Sinatra Ultimate Christmas albums on vinyl. And so we were able to do that.
Awesome.
Well, it's a lot different. You're deliberately taking this record out and putting it on there, putting the needle on it,
Yep.
flipping the record over when it's done, changing the discs, doing all that. It's a lot different than pressing play on YouTube Music and having the music happen to you.
Hmm.
Like we made a deliberate move to play the music, to start it. It was just it was slower than just pulling it up on my phone and letting autoplay do its thing and letting the music just happen to us. It's a different experience. And same with something slower, more deliberative, like say baseball or something like that. So I don't know. I like those kind of sentiments because it is easy to lose track of some of those things and get so caught up in what's happening that we move so fast that we miss stuff or just it's good to slow down.
I remember very vividly, and I never had a record player or did any vinyl, and I know, all of that's coming back, right? I mean,
Yep.
you know, like bell bottoms. What's old is new again. But I'm still, you are old enough to remember the days of, early on, a Walkman, cassette player, and then later moving to CDs, a Discman, having a stereo boombox, that kind of thing.
Yep.
And going on long road trips or getting on plane rides or whatever and bringing my big fat wallet full of CDs,
Mm-hmm.
picking out a CD and listening to an album from start to finish
Yep.
in order. Mostly Blues Traveler, because I
Yep.
did just go to that concert a little over a week ago now.
Mm-hmm.
But mostly Blues Traveler and whatever. But like sitting there and listening to an album. And even though I don't really do that anymore, and I probably should go back to doing it, I still like, I feel like that is the only way to listen to music
Yep.
because songs are on albums in a specific order for a specific reason.
Yep.
It's not accidental. They
Well,
don't just hear and see what order they land in.
that's
Like,
why for so long AC/DC refused to have any of their stuff on iTunes or on anything streaming. They finally had to because it's either that or you don't exist,
yeah,
as far as anyone is concerned. But they were one of the last major groups to do that for that very reason. They're just like, we released these albums. It was its own entity. The songs, sure, they got released as singles for the radio, but
sure.
they it was its own entity to like to it was an entire thing that was meant to be experienced like that. And yeah, a lot of that is lost. And I try to be deliberate and listen to albums from start to finish. If I'm going to listen to something, a lot of
Yep,
times then I'll just say like play this band radio, so you just kind of get the mix of everything that's similar.
yep.
But at the same time, I try to take at least some moments to be more deliberate on stuff like that, which I think was just kind of exemplified here.
Mhm.
Um,
I
and
do
then
remember. Go ahead, sorry.
no, you go. I was gonna kind of change
Oh,
paths.
so I do remember like early on, when Katie and I first started dating, having this debate, and I mean, we're talking about the rise of iTunes,
Hmm.
and definitely just kind of that, differing kind of upbringing, slightly different time. She would go buy a song off of
Hmm.
iTunes. You could buy the song for 99 cents or the album for 15. And she's like, no, I'm gonna buy the one or two songs that I want. I'm like, no, like you buy the album. Like you don't know, you have to. And I wasn't buying the songs on iTunes, but I was going out and buying the CD and then ripping it into
Yep.
iTunes and have it on my iPod and
Yep.
all that stuff. And I'm like, no, you have to have the whole thing. You can't have just one or two songs. Like you have to, it's the story. You need the whole story.
Yep.
And nowadays it's just like I have my liked songs on Spotify and I hit Smart Shuffle and it just plays stuff.
Yep.
If I don't like it, I skip it. Um,
Right.
and I've completely, for over 10 years have missed the point.
Yep.
Um, so it's super funny to kind of revisit that and be like, oh, I should do better at that.
It's
Like I should go back to that.
so in that regard, something I try to do lately is I've been for the last say year or two, I've been listening to a lot more classical music and not just
Yep.
pieces of classical music, but like symphonies, trying to catch that and say like, okay, this is a 45-minute piece that's broken into four parts, but and I don't understand shit when I'm listening to it. I can't put together like, oh, this voice came back in the third movement, even though I know that stuff happens. But just trying to say, okay, I'm not just going to take this one movement from a symphony and listen to only that you might hear on the radio or whatever if you just tell Google or Spotify to play some classical music. Um, you get just trying again to just be deliberate on it and do that. But then that's also an investment in time where it's just like, man, I just want to listen to like 12 straight 3-minute songs versus a 45-minute single piece.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, just trying to take occasional moments at least to kind of go back to that. Um, but then on the flip side, for somebody as deliberative as Stubbs was thinking about baseball and talking about baseball, when Riker says, "Why would they attack us?" and Stubbs says, "Why does a mosquito bite your ear? And who cares? The answer is simple. Call an exterminator." He's just like, I don't give a shit. Fucking kill them.
Yep.
Like, my work is too important. Get them the hell out of here.
Well, and even earlier in the episode, when they're first trying to have problems, he goes, "I would rather die than leave." And Picard immediately shoots back with, "I do not believe you speak for the majority of the crew." Like, what
Yeah.
you don't just get to decide that. You reminded me of that ambassador from one of the original series episodes that was like, "No, we're doing this," and Kirk's like, "Nah."
Yeah.
Like at the end of the day, the survival of my crew is more important than your mission.
Yep.
And there are a lot of similarities in this episode with that one from that regard of like, no, I get it, man. Like you have one shot at this and you have to nail it, but something's going on, and it's not worth it to me to let 1,000 people die so that you might get the data that you
You
want.
might learn something that you think you might learn.
Yeah.
So,
So,
when it comes to what they were trying to do and the egg that they had,
hmm
am I the only one who thought we were watching Twister in space?
You can't
Because the egg
twist
even
it.
looked a lot like Dorothy.
Yep.
It looked similar, functioned the same way. Drop it in the path and wait for the data to flow in. So
Yep.
the only thing that would have been missing should have been perfect time for Kirk to come back and have Shatner show up just so somebody could have said, "Bill, you're back."
Yeah.
Don't get that. That's a very, very deep cut Twister joke. That's what you listen for. The
Yep.
the deep
Absolutely.
cut jokes.
It's
about
either that
this.
or they start replicating pop cans and cutting
Yep.
propellers out of them, right?
Yeah. So I don't have too much more on this one. I
I,
thought it reminded me of Twister in space and just same kind of idea there of what they were trying to do. Yeah, good episode. Clearly plenty to talk about.
I don't have a whole lot else other than I will just call out the fact that this is another great episode of Brent Spiner playing Data, playing another character. Like the levels that that guy can go down
Yep.
of like, all right, I'm gonna do my character, but now my character is basically been voluntarily infected with these other little characters that I now have to pretend to be speaking for, and somehow manages to blend all of that together.
But
Um,
he's still, yeah, and he doesn't seem like Brent Spiner doing that. He seems like Data
no,
doing
he
that.
seems like Data doing that.
It's, yeah, he is
I,
fantastic.
I had sent a reel to Katie a few weeks ago. It was Hank Azaria, and he was talking about the art form of doing character voices. Um, and specifically, he was talking about Mel Blanc, who played the voice of both Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck, amongst others. Like, I think he did a whole ton of them,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, Tweety, Sylvester, Yosemite, like the dude played like everything. He was talking about like voice actors are very good at doing different voices. Like if you look at The Simpsons, there's like five of them that do all the voices,
Right.
right? They just switch back and forth. And because Mel Blanc had this ability, and they were kind of playing this clip of Bugs Bunny dressed up as Daffy Duck, and then Daffy Duck dressed up as Bugs Bunny. And Mel Blanc voicing both of them, and somehow being able to make Bugs Bunny sound like Daffy and make Daffy sound like Bugs Bunny, have them be two completely different voices,
Hmm.
but also not Mel Blanc doing two voices that he just had never done before that sound kind of sort of like it was very clearly Bugs pretending to be Daffy and vice
Hmm.
versa. And Hank Azaria was talking about like how much um skill that takes because if you ask most voice actors, the most talented ones in the world, they can't do things like that.
Hmm.
Like it's a very specific talent to layer things. And then you look at
Yeah.
Brent Spiner, who somehow I realized it's not an anime character and isn't really voice acting per se, but he somehow manages to do that and do that
Hmm.
really well. And it's a pretty wild skill set. Like it's
Yeah.
so cool. So I don't know. It just made me think of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that is all I really had.
All right. So let's move on to the next episode in which Data races against time to save a human colony that's been marked for death by aliens. In the less funny Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, the Ensigns of Command.
Now, before we get into that, do you want any trivia from the last
Oh,
episode, or
sure. Yep. Yeah.
I didn't want to interrupt you because we can still use that. You can just copy
Yep.
and
Yeah.
all right. So, there's a few things in here that I think are interesting. Um, the first episode where Chief Engineer Geordie LaForge has been promoted to the rank of Lieutenant Commander.
Hmm.
He's got his extra half pip. In addition, Worf has been promoted to full lieutenant from his
Hmm.
previous rank of lieutenant junior grade.
Hmm.
So he went from 1.5 to 2. I'm curious if you noticed this, but this is the debut of the new two-piece uniform design.
So I did notice this, and I think I caught it more so by the third episode because
Mhm.
I had recalled in listening to Making It So that Patrick Stewart talked about his tendency to pull down on it.
Yep.
And so I had been looking for that, thinking that it was in the early seasons that that was happening when they had kind of the onesie thing.
Nope.
And I noticed it very much through these episodes, particularly by the third one. I had made a note of that.
Ah.
And I was like, oh, that's what they're talking about. And yeah, I did not miss that the first two seasons because it was so obvious.
Ah. So this obviously is replacing the one piece jumpsuit that we were
Hmm.
just talking about, used in the first two seasons. The cast vastly preferred the two-piece design over the previous costumes, because they found the new costumes were much more comfortable and, more importantly to them, easier to deal with when going to the restroom. It seems, when you're a long day
Yeah.
on set in costume, that's important.
Yep.
Additionally, several cast members found the old uniforms so tight and constrictive, there was legitimate concern that the old uniforms would cause permanent bone and joint damage over time due to how they were forced to walk and sit while wearing them. And if you remember from Making It So, Stewart talks about the fact that they deliberately made the uniforms like a size or two too small to highlight everyone's
Hmm.
physique. So that sounds terrible. A onesie that is 1 to 2 sizes too small.
Oh, oh,
No, thank you.
yeah.
So we have the return of Gates McFadden as Dr. Crusher.
Hmm.
Left the show after the first season, reportedly due to creative differences with the showrunners, which I think we've established is more they fired her, not so much she left, but
Hmm.
details.
Yeah.
This episode marks the first appearance of one of the computer cores of the Enterprise D.
Hmm.
Data mentions that there hasn't been a systems-wide technical failure on a starship in 79
Seven.
years. This is in reference to the systems-wide technological failure that occurred on the Enterprise A in the beginning of Star Trek V: The Final Frontier, which took place in
Hmm.
2280. Nice little callback, considering that
Interesting. I like that.
it had just been in theaters. People had probably seen it. Like,
Yep.
cool.
Interesting.
The egg is a reuse of the viral containment unit from the child. Did you catch
Hmm.
that?
I did not,
Um,
but that episode sucked.
that episode did suck. It is revealed that Guinan is a mother. She tells Dr. Crusher she has a lot of children. This also helps us to establish how long-lived her species is when she says it took several hundred years, but I managed to bring him around. Let's see here. In the original script, when Picard talks to Riker about the nanites infesting the Enterprise, he likens it to the biblical story of David versus Goliath, and not the story of Gulliver
Hmm.
being overpowered by the Lilliputians as it is in the episode. That probably makes more sense. That was the right decision.
Hmm.
Let's see. So the names of the baseball players Dr. Stubbs says out loud just before getting attacked by Wesley's science experiment are real historical figures. They are from the 1951 New York Giants versus the Brooklyn Dodgers. The moment in baseball he is referring to is the three-run game-winning home run by the Giants to win the National League that year.
Hmm.
Let's see. So I don't know if this relates to your comment earlier about the difference of the Enterprise moving right to left versus left to right. Um, but and when you brought it up, I started scrolling through the trivia real quick to see if there was anything that might explain that. And this came close, but doesn't directly address it. So this episode marks the use of a new filming model for the Enterprise D
Hmm.
that's 4 feet in length. Two models had previously been used, a 6 foot model, which the effects team found unwieldy and difficult to shoot, and a 2 foot model, the details of which did not hold up to close-up filming.
Hmm.
The 4 foot model was an attempt to strike a balance between detail and practicality and would be used as the primary model for the rest of the series.
Hmm.
The design varied slightly from the original models, in part because a forward section of the saucer was redesigned to accommodate the location of 10 forward um, to to accommodate the location of 10 forward.
Hmm.
Um, the lounge was introduced in season 2 with no regard to how its location and windows would match the exterior shots of the ship. So if you go back, you'll notice that those sweeping windows don't exist on the
Hmm.
model. Um, the 6 foot model was typically only used afterwards in scenes where the saucer needed to separate from the engineering section, as
Hmm.
the 4 foot model did not have the ability to split apart.
Interesting.
Yeah, so kind of cool.
Yeah.
All right, that's it. That's all I got for trivia.
All right. So we can go back to episode 2, the Ensigns of Command. Um, this one, I don't know on this one. Um, I gave it a 7 again because I thought overall the episode was better than okay, but not great. Again, we've got just higher quality. There, it's an interesting discussion. I mean, it gets into some pretty heavy stuff with land rights and all of well basically that and
Yep.
who has a right to be where and really showing both sides of it and I think in an effective way. um yeah, I thought it was I thought it was a good episode. Not the most memorable, not one that I think I'll be like, yeah, I can't wait to watch that one again. It's probably not one I'll really ever give another thought to, but in watching it, it was a I wish there was a number between 6 and 7 that would be like fine, but
Hmm.
I guess fine is where I'll fall. I'll put as good, basically, because it's somewhere better than okay, but not great.
Yep.
Um, and that's kind of how I felt on this episode. I thought it was another just fine episode. Some good more good stuff from Data, some good stuff from Picard, and some just interesting. Uh, just seeing their ways of puzzling through no-win scenarios, really.
Yeah. So I gave it a 7 as well. I think in general, it's a very interesting episode to your point, talking about things like land rights and negotiations and like they had, given this planet up, not realizing that there's a human colony there because they just didn't know and now you have all these, events that are happening as
Well, I think the human colony arrived the after the treaty had been signed
that could
because they accidentally ended up there and
yeah, that
survived.
wasn't yep.
It wasn't a oh hey, we gave away your shit because you didn't show up to the meeting and we didn't know you were there. It
Right.
was, hey, they
Oops.
bought this place and then you crash landed and turned it into something cool. Well, now they want to move in.
You're basically squatting and
Yeah,
nobody knew, right?
right.
And you're trying to claim squatters' rights as a result. Um,
Yeah.
you bought the house down the street and you transposed to the
Mm.
numbers and
Yep.
oops. I mean, it is, I did think it was kind of funny in that, we seem to have a theme of these, wayward colony ships not ending up where they're supposed to be. Can you say up the long ladder? Um,
Yeah.
like, oopsie daisy.
Hmm.
But so like I said, I gave it a 7. I think it was an interesting exploration of all those things. It does, quite frankly, have one of my favorite Picard scenes of all time in it. And I'm sure
Hmm.
you know which one I'm talking about without us even getting there yet. But the flip side of it is, man, those colonists were dumb. Um, and to a certain extent, I get it. Like it's, some mysterious bad guy that, you're not necessarily gonna believe from the outset is going to, cause you harm. But also, like, you got it is what it is, right? Just freaking
Hmm.
lead. And the other thing was they talk about 15,000 people that they need to evacuate. You only ever saw 30.
Hmm.
Yes, budgetary reasons, you're probably not going to expand it much further than that, but it seemed like a very small colony for 15,000 people.
Yeah. I don't know. I just kind of bought into
Yeah,
that and
I
just
did too. I
accepted
didn't
it.
spend a lot of time thinking about it, but I did think it was funny that there were always the same 30 people around.
Yeah. 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 I don't know. I thought it was interesting because yeah, they showed both sides of like, hey, we're here. And when he picks up the water and he's just like, do you know what this is? Like, this is the blood and the sweat of
Yeah.
what we built. And and how, yeah, it's like they're making a good point. Why should they're not the ones who violated the treaty. They've lived there, like they were born there.
Hmm.
They they aren't the ones who showed up on the wrong planet.
Yep.
They were born into a shitty situation and made the most of it.
Yep.
But then at the same time, the Sheliacs or whatever they're called,
The
they're
Shellyak.
yeah, the Sheliac, they're like, hey, this is our planet. We're giving you fair warning, but we're gonna,
Fair
yeah,
warning. In
we'll,
their
we'll
mind.
be, yeah, we'll be there in 4 days. Get the fuck out. I mean, but and that's what I'm saying. It's a less funny Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy because that's
Who
basically
built
what
the
happens in the Hitchhiker's
intergalactic
Guide to the
highway?
Galaxy.
Yep.
Yeah, they're just like, oh, we're coming through, so
I really need
bye.
to reread those books. They were always some of my favorite. Douglas
They
Adams is goddamn brilliant.
they are great. I've only read I think I've only read The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy and The Restaurant at the End of the Universe.
Yep.
I've got the last three that Douglas Adams wrote, but haven't read them yet. Huh. Um,
You mean the 5 books in the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy trilogy?
yep,
Which is literally what it says.
that's awesome. Um, but yeah, I guess I don't have much opinion to offer on the actual land debate and the land rights dispute that they're having because that's essentially what the story is. Um, I did make some notes of the a message I've heard before is don't try to save a drowning person who doesn't want to be saved
Yep.
because that will kill you. Um, and that's kind of what it was. It was like if they stayed there and keep trying to convince them to leave and they don't want to, it's like there's only so much you can do
Yep.
before you're going to get taken down with them
Yeah.
because the Shellyak are coming, whether you like it or not, and whether it's fair or not, it is.
And
And
I think
there is a
that
point where you need to to accept reality on reality's terms.
yep.
And if those terms say this is where you can make your stand, but this is where you will die.
Yeah, your odds aren't great. And
Yeah.
I did like that, that is the message that Data was trying to convey.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I know you don't believe me, but you
Yep.
have to know this is not going to end well.
Yep.
That's fine. Like, you can make that decision. And, he obviously takes it to, the most extreme example, which I think is an interesting character development for him to basically destroy the aquifer in order to prove a
Mm-hmm.
point. That's
Yeah.
that's a pretty ballsy thing for him to do. Although maybe less surprising in light of pen pals, where we realize that sometimes he doesn't always make the most logical decisions, but what he feels are the right
Yeah.
decisions. I say feels with the appropriate emphasis,
Yep.
right? Um, so from that regard, again, I think it's super interesting to watch Data try and have to navigate this as as a machine, as a, unfeeling, we think,
Mm-hmm.
uh, device of sorts, trying to work with very emotional humans.
Mm-hmm.
and I think he does it actually pretty well considering. But I also love Picard the diplomat and his interactions with the Shellyak and
Hmm.
Shellyak in general. Like the one line where he wants to, to revisit the contract and they go, conversation is neither required nor desired, and they disconnect. It's like I really would love to use that at some point on like somebody I just don't want to talk to anymore. Hey,
Yeah.
can we talk about this? Conversation is not required nor desired. Click.
Yep.
Um,
I thought I made a note about how smug Picard looked at the end, where he was just like, "Oh, I figured it out.
yep.
I'm gonna
Oh,
get him."
what
And
it's one of my favorite moments,
yeah.
and it's
Oh, it was great.
so
But yeah,
awesome.
he looked just so smug.
They're sitting there hailing the ship, and he's pacing around,
Yeah,
checking for
just
dust.
cleaning off the card.
Yep. And then finally, that you enjoyed that. You're damned
Mm.
right. Yes, it is. It really, really, really is one of my favorite scenes
Yeah,
for Picard of
it
like
was.
that moment where like he's just a badass in that moment. It's great.
Yeah, yeah. I want to go back just a bit to some of the things Data said. I
Yep.
thought were really good. Um,
Yep.
in him trying to explain, because he's trying to explain to the people like this is what's going on, and I don't know if he's being sarcastic or trying to just appeal to what he recognizes as their humanity. Um, But one, I thought when he's talking with Goshevin and saying, "I wish to speak," and Goshevin says, "No, leave now." And Data responds, "Do you consider your position so weak that it cannot withstand debate?" And without going into all of it, watching this, so I ended up watching these twice. I rewatched them again yesterday and today to
Yeah.
refresh on it. But the first time I watched this episode was one day before the election in 2024. So it was kind of like, yeah, that's a
You mean
fitting
not
time.
2028? Or this, we're not gonna get that
a,
published.
a
Oh,
fitting
it's
a
not that one.
fitting time to watch an episode with comments like that. I thought was interesting. Um, and then somebody else says to let him talk, and Data had a little monologue that I thought was really good, where he says, "You know of the Shellyak threat. Starfleet wishes to evacuate you for your own protection. Yet Goshevin has decided otherwise. That is his right, and I will not waste time trying to reverse that decision. I admire your conviction in the face of certain defeat. Though doomed, your effort will be valiant, and when you die, you will die for land and honor. Your children will understand that they are dying for a worthy cause. Long after the battle is over, their courage will be remembered and extolled." Somebody says, "Remembered by who?" He says, "Yes, that is true. There will be no one left alive to remember." Um, I and then he even does say, "I was simply attempting to describe your inevitable destruction in a matter that would have an emotional effect." And it's interesting seeing Data trying to do that, but also he did state that in a very effective way, that probably got through to some of them.
He baited them into that comment,
Yep, yeah,
uh, which I think is fantastic.
yeah. But yeah, I don't have a whole lot else on this one. Like I said, I thought it was a fine episode, so I gave it a 7, call it
Yep.
good. I did like from both Data and Picard, we see very similar, like there's a lot of discrepancy between how they handle these diplomatic situations because they're both in diplomatic situations. Data's trying to convince the people like, "Hey, you need to get the hell out of here." And he's trying to save them, and Picard is also trying to negotiate on the other side, like, just give us some more time.
Yep.
And both of them, to be successful, required guile but also shows of strength. I mean,
Hmm.
Picard had a show of strength by shutting off conversation and just being like, all right, I said my
Yep.
piece, out.
Yep.
And then letting them call back, which we've seen other times
Oh,
before, whether Kirk has done it, Picard's done it, and we
it's
see
just great
those.
posturing, right? I love it so
Yeah.
much.
But effective diplomacy for both of them required some level of guile. They had to say, okay, if I try to come at this straight on, it's not going to work. They're not going to buy it. It's not going to be effective. So I need to come at it. I need to flank it. I need to come at it from the side or from a different angle. And both of them did that. And also Data having just an extreme show of strength. Like, okay, I blew up your aqueduct. What are you going to do now? And just saying, like, okay, words didn't work. So I'm going to escalate because I still need to save you. And it's not like not having an aqueduct is going to matter if you're dead in 4 days.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know. I thought there was a lot of just interesting points in this episode. And while, like I said, I don't know if this is going to be the most memorable of episodes, I still thought the quality of it was good. It told a complete story. It was a just solid episode. And then you get to explore the idea of uh, getting the bookends of Data playing violin and saying you should probably go to the next one because I lack soul. And then I liked Picard's comment to him when he says, "Well, shouldn't we always be honest?" And he says, "Excessive honesty can be disastrous." And it's like that's wise.
Yeah. It, it's funny because I've spent a large chunk of the last, almost 10 years of my career as a people leader, right? Having people report to me in a very technical field. And there's something about very technical people that they need to be very
Mm.
exacting and very accurate.
Yep.
And when you try and coach them on certain things of like, hey, maybe don't say it like that. And then we get this whole, but it's the truth. It's like, but I'm not asking you also to say something that's not true. I'm asking you to say it a different way that
Hmm.
maybe elicits less of an emotional response from the person that you're saying it to. So when
Hmm.
we talk about excessive honesty, like those are the things that I think of like going too far. You can say too much. There are things that just don't need to be said or don't need to be said that way. And that's
Hmm.
what they're hitting on there. And yeah, I think it's super wise. And I think it's something that, sometimes we forget about that it's okay to just not say something or say something a different way.
Yeah. Well, and then I like the summary of creativity at the end because the whole point in that discussion is Data is not creative. He
Hmm.
is just a mimic. And
Yep.
at the end, he says, well, it's not my playing that was beautiful. I took the techniques of these two people. And Picard is like, well, they are very different, and you combined them flawlessly.
Yep.
That is like that is the definition of creativity. I mean, you go back to the old adage, there's nothing new under the sun. I
Yep.
mean, everything that's happened has happened before. Everything that's been done has been done before. There's nothing original, nothing new. And to a point, that's kind of true. So it's finding it's I go back to an old quote that I'll butcher, an idea from Jordan Peterson that I heard a long time ago that was basically like, if you want to connect a lot of dots, or if you want to connect a lot of dots, you need to collect a lot of dots. So it's like, you're not going to come up with some original idea, but you may come up with some original combination of other ideas, which is in and of itself a new idea. Um, and things like that. So I think I like that that's kind of the back end bookend of this episode is them saying, "Well, Data, you took these pieces from others. You took two very different techniques and styles and made them one and did
Yeah.
it successfully."
Yeah. And nobody's ever done it before,
Yep.
theoretically, right? I
Yeah.
mean, you look at like music, just in general, to stay on that theme. There's only a finite number of notes. There's
Yep.
only a finite number of chords and chord progressions and ways to like. So yeah, I mean,
Yep.
it's all variations on a theme, but combining them in ways that maybe no one's thought of before. But
Right.
at the end of the day, like you're not going to invent a new chord progression. You're just not.
Right.
So
It's been done before. Um, but yeah, yeah, all in all, good episode, fun little bookends. Another good Data episode, and those are always great.
I love good.
Um, yeah, and it's fun seeing her. Um, yeah, it's good interactions with Data and Ardrian, um,
Yep.
and some of that.
That's a good point. That one was a weird one to me, honestly. It feels
Yeah,
like she fell in love with him very quickly.
yeah.
And I found that kind of that interaction sort of awkward in some
Oh, it
ways.
was very awkward.
Um, but it didn't become a big part of the episode, which I was okay with.
Yeah. Yeah. So, any good trivia on this one?
Yeah, there's a few. So the shuttle that Data takes down to the surface is the shuttle Onizuka, which was named for the astronaut Ellison Onizuka, who was killed in the Shuttle Challenger incident
Hmm.
in 1986.
Hmm.
This episode sees the first appearance of the redesigned Starfleet hand phaser. The bulky hand phasers used in the first two seasons had been mockingly compared to dustbuster portable vacuum cleaners by fans. So new props were created with a
I had
sleek,
not thought of that, but now I don't think I can unsee it.
exactly, more with a sleeker, more weapon-like profile. And when you see people that do prop recreations and stuff like that, they literally refer to them as the dustbuster phasers, which I
That's
think is
funny.
great. All right. So the phrase "the Ensigns of Command" is from the poem "The Wants of Man" by John Quincy Adams.
Hmm.
In the context of this poem, the term ensign means a flag or symbol, not a rank.
Hmm.
The Shellyak costume is the same costume used for Armis in Skin of Evil, only not covered in oil.
Hmm.
Kind of see that now, right?
Yeah.
During filming, the entourage of the Dalai Lama visited the sets and had pictures taken with Brent Spiner, because
Hmm.
why not?
Yeah, why not?
The Shellyak vessel is a reuse of a merchant cargo ship from Star Trek III, The Search for Spock. Let's see here. This one I thought was kind of interesting. Uh, the so according to Paramount's public records, actor Granger Hines, who played Goshevin, was unhappy with his performance, so he requested his name be removed from the credits. All of
Hmm.
his lines were subsequently overdubbed by another actor.
Okay. I was gonna say, like, again, knowing a little bit about TV production, and they
Yep.
do this thing called ADR, which is I'm I'm blanking on what the
Uh,
actual what it stands for, but
yeah, look it up real quick.
it's basically they go in and they say the sound sucked when we filmed, so now we need to go in and dub over the lines. And when
Automated dialogue replacement.
yeah, so when he was talking, it felt and sounded like it was not from it didn't sound like it was captured on a set. And I had that thought in a couple scenes both times I watched the episode. It just sounded a little off. Um, and they do a remarkable job of timing the dubbing and getting it right. But every once in a while, it's something that, like I said, I know enough about that I notice it sometimes, and
Mhm.
particularly in this series, there are times where I notice it, but with Goshevin in particular, that's really interesting that it was somebody else dubbing over
Yeah.
and not him. But yeah, it had that feel of like it didn't sound like something that was captured on a stage
Hmm.
or on a
So,
set, but in a recording studio.
so it says conspiracy theorists, however, find several holes in this idea, and many fans believe it was a cover story for a secret incident which Paramount did not want publicized.
Hmm.
No indication on what said incident may have been, but that it doesn't
They didn't
have.
want to reshoot the episode, but they didn't want him to be involved in it in any way. Yeah, interesting.
Um, Although this episode aired after Evolution, it was actually the first episode produced during the third season.
Hmm.
Um, when Picard, Riker, Troy, and Worf are reviewing the Shellyak Treaty, the majority of the body text is notes from the writers while they were working on the episode, as well as an Easter egg for several different anime series, including Dirty Pair, Akira, Ranma One Half. I'm not an anime person, so I'm probably butchering this. Urusei Yatsura and Ray Gull Force.
Hmm.
So I think that's interesting. During this episode, the dedication plaque for the Enterprise is seen. This is different from the reproductions available for sale online.
Hmm.
Main text reads USS Enterprise Galaxy Class Starfleet Registry NCC 1701D Utopia Planitia Fleet Yards Mars, fifth starship to bear the name. This is followed by a single narrow column of 5 lines of text, the names and ranks of the creators of Star Trek.
Hmm.
At the bottom is the line to boldly go where no one has gone before.
Hmm.
Reproductions available also include the dedication date and United Federation of Planets, as well as between 3 and 6 columns of names beneath the main section, depending on the version. As such, the reproductions are not accurate, at least not through the third season.
Hmm. It's interesting.
And let's see. That's it. That's the only thing else. It's good. So there we have it.
All right. So shall we move on to the final episode for this week,
We should.
in which the crew travels to Rana 4, a remote colony where just two of its 11,000 inhabitants have miraculously survived a devastating attack in episode 3, The Survivors.
Dun dun dun.
Um, this is another one. There was one piece of it that I didn't feel like, even watching it a second time, they did enough to really explain. Um, they resolved it. Aside from that, I felt it was another good episode. Very different than the other two that we watched, but still good. So I gave this one a 7 as well.
Well, look at us being so consistent this week. Because not only did I give it a 7, that means we both gave all three
Mm-hmm.
episodes.
Yep.
Uh, so before I get into this episode in particular, I think that that's a great sign of like how consistent the show is getting.
Yeah.
Uh, the
And,
episodes are consistently good
yep.
with some peaks, and for sure we'll find some valleys in there too. But if the baseline is a 7, I'm
Y-
good
y-
with that. Like
And
that's a happy day for me.
that's kind of how I felt just watching these. I was just like, I feel, and part of this I'm sure is bringing my own things I've heard about how the series gets better. So I'm coming at it expecting these to be good. And so there's that part of it. But also just having this understanding like, okay, there's going to be a lot of good episodes that maybe like just where it's not like good as the new okay, but
Right.
there's just going to be a lot of just solid episodes that are just good in and of themselves. And I feel like that's how all of these were. I don't feel like any of these will end up on a top 10 list or even on a top 20 list,
No.
maybe of episodes to watch. But at the same time, they're all just there's not much to be overly critical of
Yeah, they're
in any
good
of these.
episodes.
Yep. And so it's yeah, it's just that kind of weird, like, okay, well, am I saying that these are all better than whatever, or am I setting a bar kind of high? But yeah, it's just going with that gut feeling of like, no, these are just fine, fine, good episodes. Yeah, I liked it. Um, yeah, while each of these had their own had weaknesses though, but nothing was. We've seen plenty of episodes where there were weaknesses that really detracted from the episode. And the weaknesses that these episodes kind of collectively had were just not that much. It was just like, yeah, I can find some stuff to complain about, but that's why they're sevens and not eights.
Yeah,
Nothing that really was like, well, that was really pathetic or really bad or really didn't like what they did there. It, yeah, the episodes just worked. Uh, they were effective in what they were trying to do. They each told a story. They told it well enough. They didn't have some weird B plot that had nothing to do with it. Um, I mean, I guess part of my critique of this episode is a little bit of that, but yeah, just overall, just yeah, good episodes on the whole.
yeah,
And we're seeing that I think too, just in just the overall the quality isn't just the production quality and the probably better cameras, better sets, better lighting, all of that. It's just in general, they're operating at a higher level than they were operating in season two, and it nothing more than just a feeling on that point.
I I I agree. It feels like the writing has gotten tighter, the production quality has gotten better. The stories are just they're good. They're interesting. They capture my attention
Hmm.
the entire time I'm
Yep.
watching them, which has not always been the case, right? Certainly in seasons one and two, there were episodes that are just like, holy crap, like this is so awful, I cannot focus. And definitely by, the end of the original series, it's just like, just someone take me out back now and just put me out of my misery,
Yeah.
right? And these are just very solid, well-rounded, nothing incredible, but still compelling and interesting,
Yep.
thought-provoking.
Yeah,
So
I agree. Um, yeah. Interesting episode. I really thought this one felt very much like an original series episode.
I could see,
Um,
sure.
when they first got down to the planet, when they were beaming down, some of the establishing shots that they did, I made the note like feels like an original series episode with how that went. And then them being on location, actually filming outside and doing all that, it was like, okay, a little less now. So immediately after writing that note, felt like, okay, a little less. But this episode is basically the man trap.
For sure.
Um,
Yep.
I mean, different details, but kind of very, very similar key points to it. Um, that's not to say that it was bad or anything, but just it had a very much felt like an original series episode, particularly the man trap.
Yeah.
Um, But yeah, it was a man trying to perpetuate the illusion that his wife is still alive. Um,
Which you
yeah,
don't, I mean, obviously don't know for
a
a
good
good portion of the
good
episode,
portion of it.
right?
And my immediate note following that was the episode just had good pacing. It was good mystery. It was really a sad story.
Yeah.
Um, and like we're talking about a story where 11,000 people are killed
Hmm.
and then an entire species, did he say 15 billion?
50 billion. I wrote
50
it down.
billion. 50. So even more wiped from existence, and we can still feel empathy for Kevin, which I also have to say, Kevin seems like a very non-Star Trek name. Like we've got
The
Rishan
Home Alone
and Worf
crossover.
and Picard and Kevin. It just it
I
seems
do I do love that line though, right? Are 11,000 people worth 50 billion? Is the love of a woman worth an entire species?
yeah,
Like it's it's a great line.
that whole scene, that I'll say largely monologue because it was a lot of just Kevin talking, was so good. So
Yep.
good. And you truly feel for him, which then is maybe a little messed up in that, yeah, he did destroy an entire, like wiped a species from existence of 50 billion. Um, but yeah, I don't know. Very just again goes to how effective the storytelling was in that we could truly feel bad for him, even knowing like that he's a monster
Yeah.
to be able to do that. But at the same time, you can feel for him and just be like, okay, what would I do if I had
Well,
that kind of power and that happened?
and Picard's
I
line
don't know.
his line right after that too. We're not qualified to be your judges.
Yep,
We have no law to fit your crime. You're
right.
free to return to the planet and to make Rashawn live again.
Yep.
And it's one of those things like, I guess I get it. Like the first part of it, okay, yeah, probably not qualified to be, judge. He did effectively commit genocide, which I feel like there's probably a law on
Right.
that. But okay, let's leave that be. But also, what are you gonna do about it at this point?
Yeah. Yeah.
He's so powerful. What could you?
And what can you do? I mean, clearly, if you get on his bad side, he can wipe you out
Yes.
and
So much for
everyone
the
like you.
Federation in general, right?
Yeah.
He
And,
doesn't
and
need anyone.
and there's still enough mystery to be like, we don't know how he did it. If he just did it with a thought, like, I want them gone and just gone.
Yeah.
Um, it is a little troubling that the Federation just leaves so many of these like super powerful beings out there.
Yeah.
Now, how they contain them, they can't, which is why they leave them.
Right.
But yeah, it's
Then you get
it's kind of
conned,
like,
right?
oh, let's not worry about that. But yeah, then we get Khan. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I thought it was just a really the way they told the story, the way the way it developed, and how Picard put the pieces together of like, all right, we're just gonna let them destroy the planet. We'll see what happens, and then let's go up high enough that they can't know that we're up here. And oh, look, they're back. Picard
Yeah.
knew.
Oh yeah.
He knew he was onto something, and yeah, just really really good use of the medium, good use of the time they had, and just a very effective story. This
The
episode
one
can probably be summed up perfectly by Worf, though, when Rashawn asks, "Well, what do you think, Mr. Worf? Good tea, nice
Yeah.
house."
Comfortable chair. Um, oh, I have two things. I'm gonna start with a funny thing
Hmm.
because early on, that they beam down to the planet and they're approaching Kevin for the first time, and Kevin's got a phaser, which they know doesn't work. Um, and when they call him out on that, Worf says it was an act of unmitigated gall, and Kevin says, "Didn't fool you, huh?" To which Worf responds with,
I
"I admire
admire
gall,"
y'all.
which is such a great and very typical Worf line.
Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate the fact that you took your shot. It didn't work out, but I can respect that.
Hmm.
Um, but the thing, and I should have gone back and probably rewatched this one because it has been a few weeks due to everything else we've had going on. But the music box thing, I don't feel like, again, unless I'm misremembering how all that went down, I don't feel like that fit into the episode very well.
That was my biggest issue with the episode. It
Feels like they
just
shoehorned that
it
in. The
I
shoehorn.
wonder I wonder if there was something that was in a deleted scene or that was cut for time, whatever, that really explained it better. Um, Now Kevin went to help Troy at the end, and so I had my immediate my immediate notes after watching it the first time. I said, so what happened with the music box and Troy? I know Kevin went to help her at the end, but did I just miss how that part resolved? What was the point? Was it just another part of the ploy to drive the Enterprise away? And did it impact Troy by design, or was it accidental? That's kind of where I was left the first time watching it. On the rewatch, I feel like it was intentional to drive the Enterprise away. They wanted to make her, they wanted, I think Kevin wanted to make it so they would try to take her away from what was causing her this pain.
The idea
But
being that they got further away, she gets better,
poor,
so
they
we
did
want
a
to go
really
back.
poor job of it, I
Yes.
think. So it sound like what I gathered on watching it again in the brief explanation Kevin gave, because Crusher goes in and sees him standing basically over Troy, and she's freaked out like he's going to hurt her.
Yep.
Um, and basically, Troy was getting too close to figuring out who Kevin truly was, and he didn't mean to hurt her, but it sounds like the music was kind of an intentional thing to drive her away. Like,
And I could
but
buy that, but to your point, it was terribly explained.
it was very poorly explained, and that is really my only gripe with this episode
Yeah.
is that that explanation, that piece had the story would have been just fine without it. I mean,
Or I think it would have been really cool if they had explained it, like
yeah,
worked in better.
yep, but still it didn't detract enough from the overall effectiveness of the episode, I think.
Agreed. It doesn't change my seven. It just felt
No,
nice.
but
It
it
felt like
may
they
have,
needed to give Troy something to kind of do.
yeah. Yeah, they needed to have her in the episode and doing something, and then having her just freak out. And they were able to do some interesting things by having her, like having the camera focus on her, and you can see Picard and Riker, like Riker in particular, like watching her,
Yeah.
and you hear them muffled in the background, and you hear the music, so you're hearing from her perspective.
Yeah.
Um,
And
that
I thought
made
that
for
was
some
really cool.
interesting stuff and well executed. But again, just in the story, they did a really piss poor job of explaining what the significance was.
Yep. Agreed.
And then the other question I had really was how long prior was that Husmak attack? Was it days prior, or was
They
this
don't
an
make it super
ongoing
clear.
thing?
It doesn't sound like it was too far in the past.
Yeah. But again, that's really neither here nor there.
Right.
Um,
Because they
but
say
yeah,
they got in the beginning, it says they got to the system 3 days after receiving a distress call.
yeah,
So presumably, they were in the area. The distress call had just happened. I
yeah,
think we can infer the attack had just happened.
yeah. That's kind of what I thought, but then I wasn't sure if he was just kind of rebuilding life. I mean, it, at the same time, he seemed like this has been his way of life for some time, dealing with this recreation of Rashawn
Yeah.
versus he recreated her 3 days ago, and here we are.
Yeah.
Um, couldn't really tell. It doesn't really, I think, impact the story, so I don't think it matters that much.
No.
Um, but yeah. Um, yeah, a couple fun lines in it. Yeah, I loved good tea, nice house. Uh, but um, yeah, I like when Riker is kind of calling bullshit on it early, though he clearly doesn't know what the answer is. He still knows something isn't right. Because he says, Mr. Uxbridge, as far as we've been able to determine, you and your wife and this house are all that survived the attack. That's that was either a bizarre coincidence or by design, and I don't favor the coincidence theory. I like that use of words
Yeah, for sure.
because it's not straight up
Yeah.
calling him out saying like your
There's no
story is bullshit.
accusation there. It's just saying the data supports a certain side
Y-
of that equation.
Yeah, yeah. And he even says like I'm not accusing you of anything because he says, "Are you saying we betrayed the others?" And he's just like, "I'm not saying that, but there's some reason you were spared. Um, and we'd like to know why."
In
I
your
thought,
perfectly little square plot of land with a house in it,
yep,
right?
yeah. But yeah, like again, it's crazy how this episode, Kevin is truly a monster. And even if you can look at it and say, I get it.
Hmm.
I could see that happening. That makes sense. It's believable. He's still a monster, but we're sympathetic to him
Yeah.
because we can just be like, okay, I get it. Especially if there's something where you have no connection to it. It's not like the Husmach are other humanoid people
You've
necessarily. We have
never heard
no
of them before.
idea. We've never
Yeah.
heard of them before. And yeah, it's like again that hierarchy of species that we have just and we put ourselves at the top because we're people. Why wouldn't we put ourselves at the top of anything like that?
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know. He called them a species of hideous intelligence. So I mean, there's still this mystery around what they were or how they were. Um, but yeah, I don't know. Good episode. I liked
Look at
it.
that.
I don't have much more to say. I did think it's funny how, especially watching these older shows, hearing a voice or seeing somebody and just being like, oh, that person looks so familiar. Whether
Hmm.
it's Bob Kelso from
Yep.
Scrubs in Evolution. In this one, it was interesting timing because I'm sure I would have thought Rashawn seemed very familiar. She had a voice that is just like, I've heard that voice before, not realizing I had heard it like 2 days prior, because I was like, is that the social worker from Mrs. Doubtfire?
Sure is.
Yes, it is. And now, why would I think is that the social worker from Mrs. Doubtfire? Because like 2 days before I watched this episode, I was watching Mrs. Doubtfire with Devin.
Such a great movie.
So yeah, it was just funny how like, oh yeah, that totally is her. Sounded like it was the voice. Like I've heard that voice
Oh
and
yeah,
I've heard
very
it
distinctive
recently.
voice. And she's been in a lot of
Yeah.
things.
My first thought was my first thought, I'm blanking on her actual name, so I'll just say Faye from Wings. Uh,
Oh yeah, I
but
could
then it
see.
was like, oh, it's not her. I know it's not her, but I'm close.
So the other thing that she was in that made me kind of laugh was she's in an episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm in the first season, like one of the first handful of
Hmm.
episodes. And she plays Mary Steenburgen's mom.
Hmm.
Um, and that's ironic because I had just started rewatching that show a couple weeks ago, just looking for something to watch. And I always enjoyed Curb from just pure absurdity standpoint. It is
Hmm.
a really absurd show. And so to see her in there is like, oh yeah.
Hmm.
But she's done so many different things over the years. Like a character actor in the finest form, right?
Right.
Just character after character after character in like every TV show you can think of. Benson, Newhart, um, Mr. Belvedere, Dynasty, Golden Girls, Easy Street, Twilight Zone, Hill Street Blues, like one episode each in all of these. Um, Beating the Beast, Designing Women, Star Trek, Who's the Boss, Columbo, The Brady's, just like literally one episode
Hmm.
of every show you can think of, she was in.
Yeah. One of those actresses that's been in everything.
Everything.
Yep.
Yep.
So I don't know. I laughed though because it was like, of course, we were just watching Mrs. Doubtfire 2 days before I watched this. So yeah,
Yep.
it's funny how that works out and how we just pick up on those things that we watched recently or were exposed to recently. Um, yeah. Any good trivia on this one?
There's a couple. There isn't a ton of trivia for this one, but there's a few that are interesting. So John Anderson, who plays Kevin, his wife had recently died when he had started filming this episode. And he later described his role in the episode to be one of the hardest he had ever played.
That puts a lot of it in a different perspective and
Yeah,
makes it even like maybe that's why he was so sympathetic because
yeah,
there
you
was
kind of
so
feel
much
that pain.
reality in his performance.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, I think that's really interesting there.
Yeah.
Um, the Phantom ship is said to have been hiding at a Lagrange point behind one of the moons. This is a location where an object can be held in balance within the influence of the gravity of a planet, star, or other large mass.
Hmm.
Because of the balance of opposing forces, the object can stay in that point indefinitely without expending any power to maintain its position. For a real-world example, this is how the James Webb Space Telescope is positioned.
Hmm.
This is the first appearance of Troy's teal uniform with a skirt.
I so that was also one of my I'm sorry, my very first note was Troy's wearing teal.
Yeah, mixing it up a bit.
So, I mean, and maybe that was because I noticed the other new uniforms that they had, and I was like, what the heck is this?
Mhm. So, John Anderson, again, Kevin Uxbridge,
Hmm.
played California Charlie in Psycho, 1960.
Okay.
While Anne Haney, who plays Rashawn,
Hmm.
played Eliza Chambers in the remake of Psycho in 1998.
Hmm.
Um, John Anderson played another role where his character was involved with a music box 14 years before this one. In 1975, he played Amos Pike in Little House on the Prairie in the episode Haunted House. He played a man so broken by grief he holds onto a music box to aid in his delusions. The box's music plays a large role in both stories.
Hmm.
I don't know if that's an intentional link, but again,
Yeah.
if it is, they didn't do it very well.
Yeah.
And then the last one I have for you is the Uxbridge household is a real home in Malibu, built in 1981. It was designed by California architect Ellis Gelman for his own use.
Hmm. All
So
right.
that's it. That's it. That's everything interesting.
Cool. Yeah. I yeah, I feel like all of these episodes are just good. I feel like we're watching a good show.
Yeah.
And that's kind of it. I mean, yeah. None of these episodes were totally mind-blowing. None of them were bad. They each had some points of criticism, but at the same time, like we talked about, just good episode. They were good episodes of a good show.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to continuing because
Yeah, for sure.
obviously I'm biased, but I do feel like season three is in general such a really great season. So I'm excited to
Nice.
keep watching it and then just hear your reactions to it as we just kind of keep going through
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Uh, Even
Yeah,
as I'm
I'm
titles for episodes coming up, I'm like, oh yes, like this is gonna be great. So
yeah. I'm loving it. Yeah, it's great. Well, there you go. I really liked Stubbs' comments about baseball. Once, centuries ago, it was the beloved national pastime of the Americas, Wesley, abandoned by a society that prized fast food and faster games, lost to impatience. But I have seen the great players make the great plays in here. With the knowledge of statistics, runs, hits, and errors, times at bat, box scores, men like us do not need holodecks, Wesley. I have played seasons in my mind. It was my reward to myself for patience, knowing my turn would come. Call your shot. Point to a star. One great blast and the crowd rises. A brand new era in astrophysics. Postponed 196 years on account of rain. It made me think of an interview I heard a few years ago on the Art of Manliness podcast with Philip Connors about his book Fire Season, which is about his experiences as a fire watcher in the Gila National Forest. Being a fire watcher involves extended periods of solitude, and one of the things he discussed to pass the time was listening to baseball games on AM radio. There's a simplicity in listening to baseball. In the past, I've subscribed to MLB At Bat, which gave me access to the Twins radio broadcasts. Unfortunately, I didn't have the time to listen to very many games, so I let that subscription go. But when I did listen, there was still something nice about having a baseball game on in the background working in the yard, or the garage, or driving. I know in recent years they've added things like the pitch clock to speed up the games, but there is just something about the slower pace of a baseball game that feels increasingly lost today. There's a deliberateness about listening to a baseball game compared to watching it. Similar to music, I try to slow myself down sometimes and be deliberate about what I'm doing. It's easy to ask YouTube Music to play Blues Traveler or to play Three Doors Down Radio, which gives a general playlist it thinks I'll like. It's a different experience to sit down with the intent of listening to an album start to finish. I guess all of that to say, take some time to slow down a little bit from time to time. Enjoy those peaceful moments and be deliberate to seek them out. Sermon over. And I think that's a good place to call it for this week. If you're watching along with us, next time we will discuss the next 3 episodes of Next Generation Season 3, Who Watches the Watchers, The Bonding, and Booby Trap. As always, I want to thank you for spending your time listening to our conversations about Star Trek. If you enjoy what we're doing, please do us a favor and share with a friend. Also, leave us a rating and a review on your favorite podcast app. You can find us on X at Baldly Go Podcast, to Baldly Go Podcast on Facebook, and to baldlygopodcast.com. You can also find me at aaronemery.net. Nate and I have another podcast, The In-Lap, in which we discuss the current Formula One season. Listen to The In-Lap in your favorite podcast app. For Nate, this is Aaron reminding you to never give up, never surrender. And everything worked perfectly. Huzzah!